Bună ziua și bine v-am găsit la o nouă ediție a evenimentului Me The Show, unul dintre evenimentele principale ale Business Magazine, în care povestim pendelete despre povestea de carieră a celor mai importanți CEO sau antreprenori de pe piața locală. Sunt Ioana Matei, editorul Business Magazine. Bună ziua și bine v-am găsit la o nouă ediție a evenimentului Me The Show, unul dintre evenimentele principale ale Business Magazine, în care povestim pendelete despre povestea de carieră a celor mai importanți CEO sau antreprenori de pe piața locală. Sunt Ioana Matei, editorul Business Magazine, iar alături de mine se află, ca de fiecare dată, Cristian Hostiuc, directorul editorial al ziarului financiar și Business Magazine. Iar invitatul nostru special de această dată este Frederico Monteiro, directorul Ariei Europa Centrală și de Sud la BAT. Bună ziua, mulțumesc că sunteți alături de noi.
Frederico, hello, how are you?
Hello, good morning. A pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, you run one of the biggest company here in Romania and the biggest taxpayer to our budget. And we want to know what was your career, how you reached this position. You cover not only Romanian, but you cover a lot of country around Romania. And first of all the people wants to know how they can reach this position, how they can have this career to run a business cover more country.
Yes, let me spend a few minutes basically introducing myself and talking a little bit about my career with BAT. I am from Brazil. I was born in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. It's a beautiful city, has its problems, but it's a beautiful city. And I started working actually very early in my life. When I was still in university or joining university, I had my first job in Brazil when I was 16 years old. I took my first job as a merchandising assistant for a local company in Brazil that was involved in distribution of consumer goods, mostly drinks, soft drinks and beer to the retail market in Rio de Janeiro. So basically there was a salesman, a trade marketing representative who would visit retailers and clients every day, and I was going just after him putting posters on the wall. So that was advertising the company products. So that was my first job. And from then on, I went to university and I started my career. I had a few jobs in the early days of my career, when eventually I joined BAT in Brazil. I had jobs before BAT as a journalist. I worked as a journalist for 18 months, almost 2 years. I had jobs with IBM, the big technology company that's very big in Brazil. I worked with IBM for about 1 year, and I did a few other things. And eventually one day, I was finishing university, and there was one of these job fairs, when the companies come to the university to offer jobs for young talent who are about to graduate. And in one of these job fairs, there was basically a BAT stand offering a option to join the company as a management trainee. Now, BAT in Brazil is, in a way, very similar to BAT in Romania. It's a very big company, very well known. It's a great employer, a great company to work for, very famous for developing people, investing in developing talent. So it's a big, very attractive company in Brazil to work for.
In what year you go to the BAT?
I joined BAT in 1990 as a management trainee.
1990?
1990, yes.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Yeah, now that you do the math, it's 32 years ago. But I tell you the story. I have not been with BAT for 32 years. I'll explain why in a minute. So I joined the company in the marketing department. When I went to university, I took a degree on basically marketing and business management. I always wanted to be involved in basically the marketing area. And I always thought that eventually, if I was good at marketing, I would eventually have a chance to grow professionally in companies like BAT. And eventually, if I was lucky, if I worked hard enough, I would eventually get to senior positions and eventually to a position like the one I have today. So I joined BAT in the marketing department in 1990 as a management trainee. After 6 months in the job, I asked the company to be sent to the field force, to the sales area. It became very clear to me that if you really want to understand how fast-moving consumer good companies operate, you have to understand how the product is sold, how you interact with your customers, how you interact with the retailers, wholesalers, supermarkets, etc. Because that's really where consumers make the decision to buy your product or not. So you have to understand that very well, because that's where that American expression, when rubber meets the road, when the real world actually happens, when consumers have to put money on the table to buy your product and make the decision to choose your product instead of a product from another company. So that's really the moment of truth, if you like. And I wanted to understand that very well. So I went to the field force. I spent 3-4 years in the field force in different jobs. I guess I was maybe I was very hardworking in the beginning. Maybe I was a bit lucky. But the thing is, I got promoted relatively quickly to management positions in the trade marketing area of BAT. Eventually, I came back into the BAT head office to continue my career in other marketing functions. This time, more involved in the management of the BAT brands in Brazil. And after about 10 years in the company, when it was the year 2000, actually when it was the year 1999, to be precise, I made the decision to leave BAT and join a startup in Brazil that was starting a big business, which eventually became a big business in the e-commerce area. That was the first wave of the internet bubble, the internet development worldwide, the first .com bubble. And I decided sounded very exciting, sounded very new, sounded very innovative. And I decided to leave BAT to join a startup that eventually became, after a few years, the leading and the largest e-commerce operation in Brazil and in Latin America. So I worked for that company for about 2-3 years. We took it from 0 to already a #1 position in Brazil in this e-commerce space. Then I joined another company in Brazil, also on the internet and digital area. That was the largest media portal in Brazil, still is to this day, the largest media portal in Brazil in the space of news, entertainment, and sports. And eventually, after 10 years involved in this internet space, I decided it was time for me to move back into a multinational organization. I wanted to have a global career, to basically live and work outside Brazil. And BAT invited me to come back. And I usually say that I love BAT so much, and it's such a great company, that I joined it twice. And after I came back to BAT, I think it was 2008 or 2009, I rejoined BAT in Brazil. I was in Brazil for a few months, and then I went to Japan. I was transferred to Japan as a marketing director for our business in Japan. And after that, I quickly became general manager for the BAT business in Japan, which I did for about 5 years. So I was in Japan for 5 years, a wonderful experience. Japan is a fascinating country. I absolutely loved my time in Japan. After that, I went into the BAT global head office in London. I was responsible for setting up what we call today our new categories business. So basically, as you probably know, BAT has a very clear strategy to develop and grow our business in what we call the harm reduction space. In other words, products that are a safer and better alternative to cigarette smokers. So we can help cigarette smokers who cannot quit smoking to move to products that offer less harm and less risk to the health. Products like Glow, our tobacco heating product that we have available here in Romania. Products like Views, our vaping product, and products like Velo, our nicotine pouch product. All these three categories, they didn't exist a few years back. And when I came from Japan into our Globe House head office, I was responsible for basically starting up the development of these categories and the development of these products and the brands and the design, the packaging, all the marketing mix. And I'm very proud to see that all these three products, Glow, Views, and Velo, they are present today in more than 60 countries worldwide. They are growing very fast, and they are helping cigarette smokers who don't want to quit nicotine or cannot quit nicotine to move from smoking to using these products that are substantially less risky to the health. And that's part of our global strategy. That's why we call the BAT strategy today a better tomorrow. It's essentially our quest to develop a better tomorrow for our consumers, in which hopefully people who currently smoke cigarettes will stop smoking cigarettes and will move to these products that are less risky to the health. So in short, my career in BAT was 10 years basically in Brazil. I also worked a little bit in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Russia in these first 10 years. Then I left to join these internet startups. Then I came back and I spent time in Japan, developing these new category products. And I've been here in this job based in Romania for the last year or so. I absolutely love it. Romania is a wonderful, wonderful country. Great people. BAT Romania is a very successful and very powerful company. We have been in Romania for 25 years. And out of this place in Romania, we basically are responsible for 7 markets that include Romania itself, Ukraine, Moldova, Bulgaria, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. And but the head office for this area is here in Romania, and I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, coming back to your first job, did you remember what was your salary in the first salary as a salesman?
Honestly, I don't, but because it was a long time ago, and since then the currency in Brazil has changed probably 4 or 5 times because of inflation. But I remember it was very low.
Very low.
I was living with my parents back then, And I remember when I got my first salary, the only thing I could do with my salary is basically to tell my father that from now on, you don't have to pay anymore for me, to go out with my friends or go out to the beach and spend little money for a beer or some ice cream or something, because at least that I can afford. But I remember my first salary was very, very low.
You mentioned that you spent 1 year and 8 months as a journalist.
Yes, I did. And the story is the following. I always liked to read and write a lot. I love reading. I'm always reading 1 or 2 books at the same time. And I always liked to write. I mean, I've always been good at writing, okay? And I remember I didn't know exactly what to do in terms of a career choice in the beginning. I mean, when you are 16, 17 years old, you are still not exactly fully decided on what to do with your life. And after this job that I had with this beer distributor, when I was basically putting posters on the wall, I quickly came to the conclusion that that was not going to be a long-term job, right? It was just something to get me started. So that lasted probably less than a year. And when I got out of the job, I thought, okay, now I can either go into business or I can try something else that uses what I thought was at the time a natural talent, a natural skill that I had, which is writing. I always loved writing. And coincidentally, there is the largest media organization in Brazil is based in Rio de Janeiro, my hometown. And they had an opening for a junior writer, a junior reporter in one of their newspapers, a small newspaper. And I applied for the job. I was eventually selected. And I worked for just about 2 years as a junior reporter or something for that newspaper. It was a wonderful, fascinating experience. But after a while, again, it became clear to me that it's a career that is absolutely fascinating from the values of the career. My wife is a journalist, by the way. So I love journalists so much that I married a journalist.
So you have a job, if you want, you have a job here at Business Magazine or Ziarul Financiar. The position is open for you and for your wife.
Thank you. But after these 2 years as a journalist, I mean, one of the things that I was covering a lot as a reporter was the business sector, right?
Yes.
So I was doing interviews with general managers, company presidents, marketing directors. I was covering basically the business side as a reporter. And it got me interested in business and kind of reignited in me this passion and curiosity for the business world. Then that's probably when I decided that maybe between my passion for journalism and my passion for business, maybe there was more growth opportunity, if you like, if I moved into business. That's when I started looking for a job opportunity in the business side. And that's when eventually this job fair that I was referring to happened in my university. And BAT was offering this management trainee program. And then I applied. And then, as I told you, the rest is history. I joined BAT and I stayed there for 10 years. Then I left, I came back. And and here I am. So that's how it started.
So at that time, you want to make more money in business than to be poor in journalist.
Well, I wouldn't say it was about money. Of course, we all want to be rewarded for our efforts and for our work, but it was not about money. I think it was more like there is a competitive side to the business world that always fascinated me. Not competition for the competition's sake, but basically, when you are competing with other companies, other brands, other products, you have to bring up the best in you, right? When you are up for a competition, you're fighting for market share, you're fighting for shelf space, in the retail universe, you are basically competing for consumers' attention. You really have to do your best and to be at your best kind of a performance. So I have always been very demanding on myself. I have always put a lot of pressure on myself to try to bring up the best in me. And I thought this competitive side of the business world would force me to basically be always on my toes, always at the edge of my seat, if you like.
But do you remember any of the interviews you had with the business leader back then at the beginning of your career? And do you have any leader who impressed you so much or who gave you an advice which motivated you in your future career?
Yes, I interviewed in this short period as a journalist. I interviewed some of the leading businessmen in Brazil at the time, leaders and presidents and owners of companies that are very substantial and very representative in Brazil. They have always impressed me a lot by their gravitas, by their experience, by their overall knowledge.
Valeo,
I remember
yes? Valeo.
Vale. It's called Vale, yes. It's exactly the president of Vale, that is the largest Brazilian mining company. I remember I was interviewing him, and I was a young kid. I was probably 17, 18 years old. And he was this very senior, very experienced businessman. So I was in his office interviewing him, very impressed by his overall, his presence and a big office and a very nice building. And I remember I asked him a similar question to the one you asked me. How did you get here? So what do you have to do to become the president of Vale? And I remember that he said, it's not that difficult, he said. Of course, you have to be smart. Of course, you have to work very hard. Of course, you have to apply yourself to everything you do. You probably need a little bit of luck during your career, but that is something you cannot plan for. But he said, essentially, there are one or two things that you have to remember every day. Number one, trust yourself. You are, everyone is, every one of us, we are all probably better than we think we are. So trust yourself, trust your instincts, have self-confidence, because at the end of the day, it's all about having self-confidence and believing that you are as smart, as hardworking, as basically balanced and able to make decisions and able to do things as anybody else. So essentially what I was trying to say is no one is a genius. I mean, a few people are geniuses, of course, but most of people are not geniuses. Most of people are basically as smart as you or me or anybody else. So believe in yourself and believe that if I could do it, I mean, this gentleman was saying, if I could eventually become the president of Vale, so can you. Because he was saying, you're very young, and I'm sure that you are very smart. So I'm not smarter than you. Maybe I'm more experienced. Maybe I've done a few things that you haven't done yet because of age and experience. But in terms of raw potential, in terms of what makes us grown-up, capable people, we are basically on the same level. Maybe there's a difference on experience, maybe there's a difference on life opportunities, but we are all equally capable and equally good. So if I could make the #1 job at Vale, so can you. So that was a very important lesson for me. It's all about self-confidence. It's all about believing in yourself. It's all about understanding that we can do it if we try hard and apply ourselves and keep always believing in yourself. The second thing that he told me is, in life, there will be some critical decision-making moments when we will have to take some risks and make some decisions a little bit on the dark. So either taking a job opportunity or taking a promotion that you may think you are not ready for, or eventually making a risky business decision that you are not sure how it will eventually unfold. But what he said is, don't be afraid of taking risks. The worst thing that can happen is you fail. And if you fail, you take the learnings and you try again. So risk, at the end of the day, is your friend, is not your enemy. So don't be afraid of taking risks. I mean, calculated risks, not crazy, silly risks, but don't be afraid of taking risks. So bottom line, this particular interview with this gentleman left two very important life messages with me that are essentially, one, believe in yourself, and two, don't be afraid to take risks.
Okay, what university you graduate?
I graduated from a university in Rio de Janeiro called PUC, P-U-C. It stands for Pontifícia Universidade Católica. It's a Catholic university in Rio de Janeiro. It's a very good university. It's a private university. I was fortunate enough that my parents could afford a private university for me, and I graduated, as I said, in marketing and business administration at that university.
Okay, when you go to this university and you graduate, what was your dream? I mean in terms of career, to become what?
I cannot say that I had a very clear dream that was, sharply articulated in my mind. At that time I graduated, I was already working for BAT. I had joined BAT throughout my university years. I was studying at night, so I could work during the day. So I took a night university program with this university, PUC, and I was working full-time during the day. And I had joined BAT, I think, 18 months or 2 years before I eventually graduated. I guess back then, I was very junior at BAT. I was in the very early stages of my career. I was very junior. I guess back then, my biggest dream was basically to get to probably middle management. I was in, I think when I graduated, I was in the field area, in the sales area in BAT. And I had a boss that was a very, very good boss. A guy who eventually became a very good friend of mine until these days. He was very, very smart, very senior, very balanced, very knowledgeable. And I think at that point in time, my dream was basically to be like him and to eventually get to his job. Of course, life goes on and you get different opportunities and different experiences. So I never had a very clear articulation, if you like, of an end game for my career. Like in 10 years, I want to be this. In 20 years, I want to be that. Basically for one simple reason. I think if you plan too much for the long term, the chances are you're not going to get there because life is not perfect. Things don't happen the way we want them to happen all the time. Life is more random, is more unpredictable. So if I had planned 10, 20 years ago or 30 years ago that I wanted to be, as I am today, the general manager of BAT Romania and the area director for 7 countries in BAT in Europe, probably that wouldn't have happened because life is not perfect. So the way I've taken my career was always based on a few things. I always ask myself, do I really like what I'm doing now? Is my job, is the nature of my current activity, is it fulfilling? Is it rewarding? And am I learning something new? Am I helping create something new? I've always been motivated in my life for a couple of things. I always wanted to build things and create things and innovate somehow in what I'm doing. I hate routine. I don't like repetition. And I don't like to basically keep the status quo and leave things more or less as they are. I like change. I like to change things. I like to create things. I like to innovate things. I like to basically reinvent and build. And when I finish a particular job or particular posting, I would like to look back and say, I have helped build this or develop that or change the company from this position to that position. So I have always been motivated by the idea of growth, the idea of development, the idea of innovation. So that's something I always ask myself. The job I'm doing today, is it rewarding? Do I like it? Am I building something new? Am I creating something new? The second thing I ask myself always is, can I do something after this? So from where I am now, do I think I have enough learning, enough experience, and enough credentials to aspire for the next step up, to eventually do the next thing up from where I am? And if I believe that the answer is yes, that means that I still have growth opportunity. Now, I never thought that today I have this job and this title and I'm doing this thing, and in 10 years I want to be there and have the job of my boss's boss. It's never been in me to have that type of ambition. I'm more focused on being rewarded and fulfilled by what I'm doing now. And if I'm doing a good job and if I'm learning, if I'm developing myself, hopefully I can aspire to the next step up.
Okay, how comes that in 1999, you go to this startup, this e-commerce startup? What was your thinking at that time? It's a new thing, it's a new market, you want to make money if you take some shares from this startup. You left a good multinational,
yes,
BAT, and go from nowhere.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most difficult decisions I have made in my life professionally. I had been in BAT for 10 years at that moment in time. I had a very successful career. I was well positioned in the company. I was then
a good salary, I think. A good salary. Yeah.
A good salary.
What was the salary in 1999?
I don't remember.
Okay.
but it was a good salary. I mean, I was not rich, but it was a good salary, especially in the context of Brazil, which is a developing country. It's not a rich country. So everything was okay. Good salary, good job, a good moment in my career. BAT is a great company in Brazil. So if you look at it objectively, everything was okay. So I was ticking a lot of boxes. But the thing is, that was, as I said, the first wave of the internet explosion. It was called the dot-com bubble, the first dot-com bubble.
Yes.
And the whole world was talking about the internet. And the internet was going to change the world, revolutionize everything, and the world was not going to be the same anymore. So when companies in Brazil and entrepreneurs in Brazil started developing internet businesses, like this e-commerce company I mentioned.
What is the name of the company?
The name of the company is Americanas.com.
Okay, Americanas.com.
Is a massive e-commerce platform in Brazil.
Yes, okay.
Which eventually became the largest in the country and the largest in Latin America. And the story is the following. There is a retail chain in Brazil, bricks and mortar, physical retail chain, one of the largest retail chains in Brazil, called Lojas Americanas, basically mean Americanas stores. Very popular, everybody knows them. It's like Mega Image in Romania or something, or Profi. Everybody knows them, they are everywhere and very popular. And this company actually belongs to the 3G Capital group. You know the 3G Capital?
I know.
Who bought AB, InBev, and everything else?
I know.
This company belongs to these guys. And they wanted to create the internet arm of this bricks and mortar retail chain. So they had Lojas Americanas, physical stores, and they created a separate company, a startup, for the dot-com arm, for the e-commerce arm. And they wanted to put together a management team to run it and to basically to create it from zero, from scratch. They were interviewing people to create this company. And I was eventually interviewed, so through some contacts, etc., they got to me and they interviewed me. And essentially, what led me to the decision to leave BAT and join this startup was a combination of, number one, risk. I mentioned in the beginning, don't be afraid to take risk. So for me, it was a fascinating opportunity to leave a company that has been around for 100 years, like BAT, and join a company that basically did not exist, but could have a massive, bright future ahead of it. Number two, internet. I wanted to learn about this internet thing. I wanted to see what it is in this internet thing that makes it so special, and how to learn a new set of skills on, number one, how to create a company from zero, number two, how to operate in the internet, and number three, how to run a retail business, because I've been selling to retailers, but I've never operated a retail business. And this company was basically creating a retail business online. And last but not least, 3G Capital. I mean, these guys in Brazil, they are superstars.
Yes.
They are like the top of the top of the top of the business world. And I wanted to know, how is it to work with them and their business philosophy, their business mentality. They are famous for being very shrewd, very hard, very demanding. And I wanted to see if I could survive, if I was good enough to work with them. And so, long story short, I took the risk. I resigned from BAT and I joined that startup. In the beginning, it was 5 people in a small office that was probably 5 or 6 square meters. We worked in this small office for 2-3 months, and eventually 5 people became 10 people, then 20 people, then 30 people. And when I left after 2 years, there were close to 400. And I remember the day we issued our first invoice, when we sold our first item. It was a CD, a music CD.
Yes, I know.
Back then, people still buy CDs.
Yeah.
That was before digital music and MP3 and everything else. So our first sale was 1 CD, which cost probably, I don't know, R$5, which is $1 or $2. And the first invoice that was printed in one of these small printers that we have in the office.
Yes.
We issued the first invoice, we printed the first invoice, we framed it, we put it on the wall, and we said, that's the beginning of our company. So,
okay, so at the beginning we were something like Jeff Bezos with Amazon.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't like to compare to Amazon, but in a way, yes. In a way, yes. So Amazon was not present in Brazil these days. Currently it is, but it's very small. And actually, the #1 e-commerce player in Brazil is Americanas.com.
Okay, how comes that after 10 years in BAT and 2 years with Americanos.com, you never start your business?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and something that I've considered.
Because a lot of people in Romania said, look, I work in a multinational. If I work in BAT, I make, let's say, €2,000 per month net. And why to leave this company and to start my business and to lose money?
It's an interesting question, and this is something that I have considered a number of times, to eventually start my own business and take the risk of becoming an entrepreneur myself. I think I have always have the sense of reality and the humility, if you like, to understand that I'm probably a much better business leader and manager than I would be an entrepreneur. You have to know yourself, right? You have to understand your own DNA, your own personality. Especially after having observed how this Americanas.com startup came to life, how the 3G Capital team, not only these 3 leaders, but the entire
all the team. Okay.
How they think, how they behave, their values, the way they operate, probably helped me realize that maybe I was not born an entrepreneur. Maybe it's not in me to become an entrepreneur. You have to have certain characteristics to basically have a chance at being successful as an entrepreneur. So probably I've decided early on in my life that I was probably going to be more successful, and I was probably going to be more fulfilled if I applied my work, my skills, my energy to try to become a better and better business leader rather than trying to start up a new business.
What was your life in media company?
It was a very interesting experience. This media company is the largest media company in Brazil. It's family owned.
Yeah, what is the name of the company?
The name is Globo.
Globo. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a very large media conglomerate.
Yeah.
They have television, they have cable TV, they have newspapers, magazines, radio stations, everything you can imagine on the media space. And they are #1 in everything. And it's family owned. Basically, there are 3 brothers who own the company. So it's not a listed company in the stock exchange. They had everything except an internet portal. And they wanted to create an internet portal to become number one also in terms of news, sports, and entertainment on the internet, because internet was growing and everything else. So that was in the year 2001, I think, when a similar story to the Americanas.com that I just mentioned. These three brothers, they decided to create a team, and they tasked that team to create the global.com internet portal that was going to be the outlet for all the group's production in terms of entertainment, sports, and news. The person who was chosen to be the CEO or the leader of that startup was someone that I knew from before, a guy that I had worked with at BAT, by the way. He used to be my boss at BAT, and he left BAT many, many years before me. He joined a telecom company, and eventually he was chosen to be the CEO of this company. And so let's say he was appointed on Monday to basically create this internet portal. And Monday afternoon, he called me. I was in São Paulo, where the Americanas.com office was based. And he called me and he said, "Fred, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm working." And "How are you?" I said, "But I'm working." That's what it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. So of course I'm working. And then he said, this guy is a very funny guy, and is a very good friend of mine and a very funny guy. And then he said, "Come on, this thing that you're doing doesn't make any sense. You're working basically selling CDs and toothpaste and dog food, and this is boring. So come work with me, and let's create the biggest media portal in Brazil and the biggest media portal in Latin America. That's a lot more fun. We'll be dealing with sports, and we'll be dealing with entertainment and music and artists and media, and this is going to be a lot more fun." So partially because I really like this guy a lot, and he's probably the smartest person I have ever met in my life, and a very good friend of mine, and partially because he really sounded like a lot of fun to deal with, sports and entertainment, etc. I resigned from Americanas.com the day after. I moved back to Rio de Janeiro because this media company is based in Rio. And a few days later, I started with him to create this media portal again from zero. So basically, in the beginning, it was just the two of us, himself and myself. And we started basically putting on a piece of paper in his kitchen. We meet at his house. So I'll go to his house, we'll go to his kitchen and have a coffee and say, "Okay, what the hell do we do now? How do we start?" And basically, what today is global.com, which is the largest media portal in Brazil and the largest media portal in Latin America, basically started with this gentleman and me in his kitchen, pieces of paper, sketching up what we wanted to do.
Okay, if you compare the three period, BAT, Americanas.com, and Global, what was the most funny job?
In terms of fun, definitely was Global. Basically because of the nature of the job. I mean, I was, for instance, doing deals with the Brazilian Football Association to have the football games streamed live on TV. I was having deals with international, with Disney, with ESPN, with companies like this to have their shows and their content available for us in the internet in Brazil. I was doing deals with the National Basketball Association, the NBA in the United States, to have NBA games streamed in Brazil. I was creating, shows together with the TV arm of that company, dedicated shows to be made available on the internet. So dealing with entertainment and sports, it is fun. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
The nature of the job is very, very interesting. But in terms of learning and personal growth and personal development, I think probably my time with BAT and my time with Global are probably the ones where I have learned the most. BAT basically taught me business and taught me how to run a company, how to make sense of running a company. BAT taught me about the importance of people leadership and empathy with people, making sure that you develop people, you see the best in people, you give people opportunity, you rely on your team, you drive hard and you work hard. So I think BAT helped me a lot in terms of the foundations to become a business leader and the foundations to become a manager of businesses and a manager of people, which I then applied into the other jobs.
How comes that you take Romania in your career? It was an opportunity on the table. It was, let's say, a punishment. If you left Japan to come here to cover Romania and seven countries in this area, because you know Brazilian, Japan, and now this country. It's a huge difference between the economic growth, GDP, and so on.
No, look, first of all, it's not a punishment at all. Romania is an amazing country, and I really, really love the country, and I love the people, and I love being here. And BAT Romania is a very successful business for BAT and a very important business for BAT. So the story is the following. I was in Japan for 5 years.
Yes.
Then, as I said, I went to London to start creating these new categories, the division for BAT. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. And then I moved into a job that was the head of marketing for BAT in Europe, Eastern Europe, and North Africa. Basically, we have this big region called BAT Europe that covers all the markets, all the countries in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and North Africa. And I was the head of marketing for that. And I did that for 2 or 3 years. Because I was the head of marketing for the region, I had a lot of contacts with Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Hungary, etc. Because these are all very important markets for BAT. So about 18 months ago, my boss, the regional director, the #1 guy for this region, he came to me and he said, look, there's 2 possibilities for you. One, you stay in your current job as head of marketing for the region. You're doing very well and you can continue, and that's okay. Or we're going to have a business opening, and we are going to have an opportunity for the, we call it the Central Europe South area, which is Romania, Ukraine, Czech, Hungary, Bulgaria, etc. Basically my current job. And he said, we're going to have that opening, and if you want, you can take the job. And I said, I'll take that job yesterday. I'll go yesterday. So
How
I'll
comes?
move to Romania tomorrow.
Okay.
Basically again, I like being I like being close to the markets. I like being close to where the rubber meets the road, again, to use that expression. I like to be close to where the action is. I like to be running the real business in the real world. I like to be involved in the decision. I like to be involved in the day-to-day. I like to be close to people. I love working with people. I think essentially people make or break a company. And a job like this one that I have today, I'm really close to the market. I'm really close to the people. I'm really close to the decision making. I'm really close to the commercial delivery. And that's what I think I do best. And that's what I think I like to do. So when my boss offered me two opportunities, I took this one in a second. And as I said, I don't regret, and I'm very happy.
Okay. For every guest, we have the same question. 10 recommendations for the young people.
10 recommendations for the young people?
For the young people. For the Fred when he was 20 years ago, at that 20. 10 recommendations. We intend to publish a book, okay, to be a leading book here in Romanian. If someone, young people, to take, take some story from other people, how they reach a certain position and their recommendation.
let me try to get to 10.
Okay,
I think probably recommendation number 1, I think is the one that I mentioned. I heard from this president of Vale in Brazil many, many years ago. Believe in yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust what you know. And essentially believe in yourself and have self-confidence to basically understand that you can do anything. Of course, we all need experience, we all need training, we all need a bit of technical background, but essentially, as human beings, as capable minds, we can do anything. And so believe in yourself, have self-confidence. That's probably recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2, which again I heard from the same gentleman who was then the CEO of Vale in Brazil, is don't be afraid to take risks in your life, in your career, in your business decisions. Taking risk is part of growing. No one, no company, no person, no business will grow by avoiding risk, by playing safe all the time. We only grow if we push the boundaries and take some risks. So don't be afraid to take risks. Probably recommendation number 3 is stay always curious. Stay hungry for knowledge, hungry for information. You can always learn something new every day. Nobody is the master of everything. So I'm always learning, I'm always reading, I'm always talking to people, I'm always interested in new topics, new things. So stay curious, stay hungry, and try to ask yourself every now and then, what have I learned today? What have I learned this week? It can be a small thing, it can be a big thing, it doesn't matter. But try to be learning every day. I think recommendation number 4 is something I always heard from my father, who has always been a role model for me in many things. And my father always said, be nice to people, be kind to people. Be nice to people, be kind to people, listen to people, understand that everybody has a personal story, a human side, a human drama, a human need. At the end of the day, the only thing we all have in common is that we're all humans and we share the same fears, we share the same problems, we share the same issues. So understanding, being human, being warm, being kind is something that I always try to do. I think the next one is something I heard from my grandfather, actually. My grandfather was a very simple man. He came from the field. He basically was born in a very, very, very small town in the Brazilian countryside. And he was essentially a farmer. He had a small farm and he was a farmer. And my grandfather told me when I was, I think, 10 or 12 years old, a very simple lesson. Plant a tree and look after your tree. It's a very simple thing. He said, everyone should plant a tree and watch that tree grow from a small seedling to a big grown-up tree. So he said, plant a tree anywhere, any tree, and look after that tree until it's big. This nurturing of a tree will teach you patience, will teach you humility, will teach you respect for another life, another being, will teach you respect for nature. So it's a very simple thing, but it's something that I remember I did plant a tree with my grandfather. It's now a big, beautiful tree, that farm that he used to own. Then the farm was sold, etc. But the tree is still there. And I remember watching that tree grow every year. So that's a very simple one, not difficult to do. So plant a tree. There's a lot of lessons in planting and caring for a tree. Maybe the next advice would be...
Number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah.
Probably the next advice, number 6, is probably similar to this stay curious, but to try to read a lot. It's very easy these days for us to find excuses not to read. We don't have time, we are tired, we have too much to do, and there's the family, and we have to do this and do that. and it's much easier to switch on the TV and watch something on TV. So reading is becoming harder. I don't think people read as much, but there's such a pleasure in reading, and it's such a nice way of finding personal time, introspection, letting your mind kind of wander away. So I always try to be reading something, and I always try to make a point of having 2 or 3 books that I'm reading at the same time. And I never read business books, never. I usually read fiction or biographies or history books or science books. I think reading about business and these formulaic business books from whatever, Harvard Business Review or whatever, I think they are a bit formulaic. I think I personally like to read about people's lives, about history, about science, about, the other day I was reading a book about the importance of bacteria in the development of mankind. Bacteria are amazingly important.
Yes.
If you read about it. So anyway, so try to read and be curious and be reading all the time. I think another advice is, probably it's kind of an obvious one, but work hard, work really hard. I think nothing comes without hard work. Success, achievement, progress, everything is based on working hard. So I've always been very demanding on myself. I have always worked very hard. I have always expected everyone around me to work very hard. And I think working hard is basically a given. So I don't think life is very kind to people who don't basically chase progress through hard work. So for me, working hard is a given, and it's almost like a no-brainer. If you don't work hard, you don't get where you deserve to get. I'm now to number 7, I think, right? So
yes.
I need 2 more.
No,
more.
8.
Okay. I think number 8 is we all need a foundation, right? We all need some grounding. For me, my foundation has always been my family. So for different people, it could be their friends, or could be some hobby or activity that they have. For me, it's always been my family. But whatever your foundation is, I think find your foundation. Find your safe haven, the place where you go to when you need to basically vent or relax or let go, when you need protection, when you need to feel safe, when you need to feel basically, when you need to re-energize yourself. Try to find out what it is that gives you peace of mind and re-energizing. For me, it has always been my family. For some people, it's sports. For other people, it's, I don't know, a hobby. It's fine, or friends, or going out drinking, going out dancing. It doesn't matter. But understand what your safe haven is, and understand that every now and then we all need our safe haven to re-energize ourselves and prepare ourselves for the next wave of challenges.
Number 9?
Probably number 9 is try to understand, try to learn from people. During our life, professionally or personally, we meet thousands of people, right? And everyone has something interesting to offer. Everyone has something smart to offer. Many times in my life, I have found myself asking myself, what would that person do in this situation? How would that person approach this problem? What would that person think about this issue? So that person could be not only one single person, but different people. But we all have role models in our life. In my personal life, as I said, my father was a role model for me in many points. I had people that I have met professionally who are role models in this or that aspect. So try to understand who your role models are and try to learn from them and eventually have mental dialogues with them. If you have an issue, a problem, a big decision to make, a big risk to take, try to ask yourself, how would that person so-and-so do this? What would that other person so-and-so decide? It's very helpful. It has been very helpful to me, at least, to understand my role models, understand the way they think and the way they approach issues, and eventually have these mental dialogues with them to help me guide my own decisions, my own behavior. So trust your role models. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say. It's very helpful to be inspired by someone, and we are all always inspired by someone. Maybe last but not least is try to have a bit of fun. I think whatever you do in life, professionally or personally or as a hobby, if it's not rewarding, if it's not satisfying you, if it's not giving you pleasure or fun or entertainment, or if it's not something that you feel good about, don't do it. Because if you're doing something that you're not happy about, you're probably doing the wrong thing, and you shouldn't be doing it. So if you have a job that pays well and you have a promotion and whatever, but you are unhappy, leave it. If you have a job that makes you very happy, but probably you think you should make a little bit more money out of it, maybe it's a matter of time. Maybe it's a matter of waiting for the right opportunity. But if it's not rewarding, if it's not fulfilling, if it's not making you happy, probably you shouldn't be doing it. So try to ask yourself, am I happy doing what I'm doing? Am I enjoying it? Is it fulfilling? Is it rewarding? So yeah, I think these are probably 10 pieces of advice that...
from your career. Okay,
yeah,
for your career and your life.
From my career, from my life, yes, I guess.
I'm happy to hear about your encouragement regarding reading. And I noticed that you have a bit of a philosophical approach to life, even when we speak about career. I was wondering, what do you think is your life and leadership philosophy? And maybe mention a few books which influenced your life so far.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult, I think, for me to try to describe my leadership style or my leadership kind of a profile. As I said, I always tried to, number one, work very, very hard and be very demanding on myself. I think if I have to lead a company and lead people and lead the business, I have to lead by example. And I have to be very demanding on myself to give me the right to be demanding on the business and on the people. So that's probably my characteristic, if you like. Number one is work very hard and apply myself very hard. I also think that it's very important, as I mentioned, that we are respectful of people and that we are kind to people and we help people grow and become better, more rounded professionals. Everybody has a talent. Everybody is good at something. So you have to help people bring that up. You have to help people take that raw potential that everybody has and try to bring that up and maximize it. In order to do that, we have to be kind, we have to be aware, we have to help people develop to their best full potential. So work very hard, be very kind to people. The other characteristics I think about my leadership style, I think I've mentioned before, is don't be afraid to take risk. Try to build something new. If I'm not building something, if the job I'm doing is not about building, transforming something to be better than it was when I started, I think it's wrong. I think our job in life as business leaders is to build, is to grow. If I start a job, if I start a new assignment, if I start a new career, a new position in a company, if I'm not building something new, helping that company, those people, that team get better, I don't think I'm doing my job. So I'm always asking myself, what are we building? What are we creating? what value for consumers, for people, for employees are we really building? It's not about numbers. It's not about more profit, more share, more volume, more this. It's about fundamental benefits that we should leave behind for the company, for the country, for the people, for the employees. So I think in summary, it's about working hard, taking risk, respecting people, and be sure that you're building something, that you're leaving a legacy behind, that the business you leave behind is better than the business that you took over when you started. I think that probably sums up what I try to do when I'm kind of in a new business. Now you asked me about books. It's an interesting one because, as I said, I like to read a lot and a variety of books on a variety of topics. So I think it's a bit difficult for me to name one or two books that made a big impact. So probably I'll try to list maybe the most recent books that I've read because they're more, they're fresher in my mind. So I read a book recently that basically described how Portugal, the country Portugal, became the first global superpower in the 16th century, 15th, 16th century, when Portugal basically set out to sea and the Portuguese salesmen, Vasco da Gama, Pedro Álvares Cabral, basically the famous Portuguese sailers, they navigated down the coast of Africa and then up on the Eastern African side up to India, how eventually these Portuguese salesmen crossed the Atlantic and discovered Brazil and discovered many other countries on the South American side, and how this amazing, daring dream of going out into the big ocean, that imagine in the 15th century, the ocean was a big unknown, was almost like going to space in these days. And in doing so, they helped turn Portugal into the first global economic superpower, which is an amazing story. So it's a book I read recently. It was fascinating. Lots of business and leadership lessons in that book as well. I read a book recently by Stephen Hawking, the famous physicist from Cambridge University. It's called Simple Answers to Complicated Questions, or something like this.
Yes.
It's about physics.
Yeah.
About basically.
It's a very hard book.
It's a, yeah.
Yes,
All
very hard.
Hawking's book are difficult.
Yeah, I read, I think, 2 pages and it's not for me.
But you know the book I'm talking about. It's a very interesting book. So I finished that one, I think, a week or so ago. I read a book maybe last month or the month before called Why We Sleep.
Okay, Why We Sleep. Okay.
It's basically the importance of sleeping and why human beings and animals and plants, why living creatures need to sleep and the benefits of sleeping, and basically these benefits of not sleeping or not sleeping well. Again, a fascinating book.
A lot of people are afraid, young people, to go to work to the cigarette company. What is your answer?
My answer is the following. I think you have to probably look at companies like BAT today no longer as a cigarette company. Of course, we make and sell cigarettes, but the number one objective of BAT today in every single market in the world is to convince cigarette smokers to stop smoking cigarettes and move to products that are less risky to the health versus cigarettes. The thing is, finally, we have a solution to the problem of smoking. So for people who think about BAT, I think probably my number one advice is don't think about BAT as being a cigarette company, as you probably imagined it to be 10 years ago. We are increasingly a company involved in beyond cigarettes, after cigarettes. These new category products that I mentioned that I helped develop a few years back, and now I'm helping deploy in the countries so we can convince existing cigarette smokers to stop smoking and move to these new products. So being part of that transformation and being part of that building that better tomorrow for smokers, for society, for consumers, I think is a big thing. If someone wants to join BAT and think that BAT is only a tobacco company, a cigarette company, what I'll probably say is have a look at what we're doing recently, have a look at these new products, and have a look at what we want to build for the future. Because being part of that transformation is a very exciting thing. And if we are successful, I think the destination of this transformation would be a very exciting and positive thing for BAT, for our consumers, and for society in general.
Okay, you mentioned that you like Romanian, and for BAT it's a good country. But in the meantime, a lot of young Romanian wants to leave this country, to run from this country. What will be your answer for them? Why to stay here in Romania?
I think Romania is full of opportunities. I think the more I know about Romania, the more I visit different cities in Romania. So 2 weeks ago, I was, for instance, in Bacău and
Bacău?
Iași.
How come?
Yeah, I was in Bacău, in Iași. Not long ago, I was in Sibiu.
For what reason? To go from, let's say, from London to Bacău. Wow, it's a...
I come from Brazil, remember? It's,
yeah.
So I'm very familiar with smaller cities and
okay.
Actually, to be honest, I think actually Romania is very similar to Brazil in many senses. It's a big country with smart, hardworking people. It's full of opportunities. I think Romania is absolutely full of opportunities. I think the more I know about Romania, the more I visit the countryside, the more I get to know the people in the tier 2, tier 3 cities in Romania, the more I'm convinced that the opportunities in Romania are endless. There's a lot of opportunities. I think Romania have amazing opportunities for anyone and everyone to be successful, to be fulfilled, to be rewarded, and to be happy personally and professionally in Romania. If people want to leave Romania to learn, to see the world, and to basically be exposed to other realities and other opportunities, I understand. But, at least in my personal case, I always wanted to go back to Brazil, and I will. The moment I retire and I stop working and etc., I will go back to Brazil, and I'll try to take back to Brazil everything that I have learned living and working in all these other countries. So, in other words, if people want to leave Romania, I understand, but please come back to help your country and to help your colleagues and to help your fellow countrymen and countrywomen.
BAT has invested €500 million in Romania so far. Do you have any other investments planned in the future period of time?
As I was saying, BAT is a very big company in Romania. We have been in the country for 25 years. Actually, this year we're celebrating 25 years of BAT Romania. We're very happy and very proud for being contributing to the Romanian economy for 25 years. We have a big factory in Ploiești, one of our biggest factories in Europe. 60% of everything that we make in the factory in Ploiești is exported to other countries worldwide, more than 20 countries worldwide, supplied from the Ploiești factory. We employ 3,000 people in Romania directly, and we generate 30,000 jobs indirectly. We are the #1 taxpayer in the country for 2 years consecutively, and we are happy to contribute to the state budget and to the local economy. The total amount of investment that we have made in Romania over these last 25 years is 125 billion euro. So, and we plan to continue to invest more. Romania, as I said, is one of the most important countries for BAT globally, and is a market and is a country where we have been very successful. We continue to invest and we continue to employ more people. We continue to invest in the factory. We continue to invest in the development of our team. The Romanian team is amazing. I'm very thankful to our colleagues in BAT Romania for their amazing hard work. And we also invest a lot of money in Romanian arts and culture, more than 1 million euro every year. in supporting Romanian arts and culture. So I think the short answer is yes, we have invested a lot and we will continue to invest a lot in the Romanian market.
That's great news. I was wondering, you spoke about the Romanian talents, and you are responsible now of thousands of employees in the region. Which are the talents or the qualities you appreciate the most when it comes to hiring a new person? And if you still get involved in the recruitment process from time to time?
I do get involved in the recruitment process. I mean, not for every single job, but I do get involved in the recruitment process and I do interview a lot of people. I like that. As I said, I think people make companies. I think the most important contribution that we can have to any company is basically making sure that we have the best possible pool of talent in our organization. So I actually enjoy a lot recruiting and hiring future leaders for the BT Romania organization. In terms of what we're looking for, I'm not so much driven by the CV and by the previous experience. People that have worked in this company or have done this job. Of course, that's important because that shows competence, that shows experience. But what I'm mostly interested in is people's personalities. I try to understand in these interviews if people have this inner drive, this inner, appetite for growth, for development, for hard work, for curiosity. I would like to, maybe I'm trying to find in people some characteristics that I believe have been important for me during my life, but I'm more interested in people's inner values and inner energy rather than the technicalities of the CV. So, and I really appreciate interviewing people a lot. And I think it's one of the most important parts of my job is ensuring that we have very good people in the company and that we have the right people in the right place doing the right job.
Okay, Fred, thank you very much for this discussion, very interesting discussion. You said a lot about your career. We hope so that who will read our story about your career to be one of to be an inspired leader as the former CEO of Vale became for you.
Thank you very much and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Ok.
Thank you and good luck. Deci ați urmărit o discuție cu Frederico Monteiro, directorul Ariei Europa Centrală și de Sud al BAT. Alături de noi s-a aflat Cristian Hostiuc, ca de fiecare dată la evenimentele Mii de CEO. Mulțumim, Cristian.
Ioana.
Zi bună tuturor și ne vedem în curând la o nouă ediție a evenimentului Mii de CEO organizat de Business Magazine Lunar.